meet humanity.
Your very existence is wrapped up in the things you are here to fulfill. Whatever you choose for a career path, remember the struggles along the way are only meant to shape you for your purpose.
Welcome to In Bloom. I am your host, Michaela Richmond, and this is a Pro Humanity podcast.
Welcome to the In Bloom podcast. Today, I'm very excited to welcome onto the podcast Christian Young. He is an artist, a web ops solution consultant at Aptitude 8, and an all-around great person. So a little over a year ago, Christian committed to creating art daily. And about 270-ish days into the challenge, his stuff started blowing up. So since then, he's gained about 52,000, almost 53,000 followers on Twitter, 124,000 followers on Instagram, and he is just about to break 4,000 subs on YouTube. So today I really want to talk about kind of like the act of committing to something. Anywho, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, okay. So first, the way that I want to take this is kind of like, it's difficult for a lot of people to commit to something daily, nonetheless for like 365 days. That's a lot. What made you decide to do that? And just kind of like, first we'll do like a very macro, what was the result? How do you feel? Like, how has it changed things? And then we'll dive in.
Okay, cool. Do you want me to talk about like the macro part first?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I've seen the most improvement as a result of it. Definitely anywhere in my art career. Not really career, but just art journey, I would say, because there are some aspects of it that are a career, but a lot of it is like just hobby related. But I think overarching, I like look back at my very first piece, and I look at even pieces just a few months ago, and I was like, wow, those look really bad compared to what I'm doing right now. So, and usually like people treat that as a bad thing. They think it's like, oh wow, my art was so bad. It's like, if you recognize that there was a lot of weaknesses or there was a lot of things that you didn't like about your art, but that you do like about it now because you fixed it, I think that's a good thing, especially in a short amount of time. That just shows, I think, the results of doing it every day, and especially I was dedicating like 1 to 3 hours every day to it. So it wasn't just like 5 minutes a day. It was a lot of my day was committed to it. And I think it definitely gave me results I wanted. And hey, you know, an audience joined me along the journey. So maybe that's even the better part. It's the friends we made along the way.
Yeah. So like, okay, so whenever it comes to learning a skill, like you came into this wanting to learn art, right? And you were like, okay, I'm not a bad artist. I like art. I really want to get better. And so what made you decide that committing every day was the thing that you needed to do?
Yeah, so I've actually done this challenge before. I did it back in, I think it was 2018. It was the start of the year. I've been drawing since I was, little. Obviously, most artists do. But I didn't start getting serious about it until I was like 13 or 14, where I like watched the tutorial and I like copied this character design from this YouTuber called Draw with Jazza. And from there I was like, oh my goodness, I love this. And I started drawing like all the time. But it was back in 2018, I was like, oh, I'm going to do a daily art challenge. And it was okay, but a lot of it was just like doodles. Like I maybe drew like a little face that took me like 5 minutes or whatever. But I look at every day from that challenge and I didn't see really any improvement from it. And I kind of went through lulls of doing my art. I was sometimes not doing it for long periods of time. Sometimes I was posting like every day for like a month. And then sometimes I wasn't. And I was just like reflecting on how little improvement I actually was seeing. And I'm like, this is something I'm genuinely passionate about. Like I show people this. I tell people I'm a digital artist. But I'm not seeing it for myself. And because I'm not pushing myself to be better at it, it wasn't as enjoyable. So I came to a point where I was like, you know what? I just want to do it again because I want to get good at art. I want to be better at this thing that I say I love. And I'm willing to put the time in it for every day. I mean, I think I started with like 1,000 followers on Instagram, and it didn't really mean much. I didn't get that many likes on any of my content. I was just like, I'm going to do it for myself because it's just a hobby I liked and I wanted to be better at it. So I think it was kind of the inspiration of looking back at my previous challenge. I'm like, I didn't challenge myself enough. I felt like I did a whole year, and I looked back on it, and I was like, I felt like I almost wasted a year because I didn't even get that good at it. Besides, I disciplined myself to posting something every day, which is enough for a lot of people, and that can be a great thing. But for me, it just wasn't cutting it, and I felt like I had to redeem myself.
That's funny. Yeah, I kind of understand that. So, like, you can't go into a journey like this wanting to gain followers, you know what I mean, or get a certain result. It has to be an internal thing. Like, you wanted to do this because you wanted to be a better artist, and I think that really speaks through in like the way that you deliver your content and the way that you create your videos, because there's just like an element of you, and I think that a lot of people get caught up in creating things for other people. So I really, really like the fact that your stuff is your own. And yeah, I also think it's so like you challenged me because I wanted to get better at design, and I was like, okay, I've watched Christian do this every single day and have seen how much he's improved. And I think that like that's so like the things that are the simplest are usually the ways to go, but they're the hardest too. Mm-hmm. So how did you like actually carve out that 1 to 3 hours per day? How did you make that a part of your day-to-day, even on, the days that you didn't have much time?
So I will not lie. Sometimes I would start pieces the day before. If I knew I wouldn't have any time in the day, but I still felt like I was keeping true to the challenge, which was, if you legit can't do something like because you're out of town or a family emergency, then, that's genuinely like, I didn't want that to stop me from like posting every day. So I think it came more about like a daily post. But I would want to make sure I was at least spending some time most of the days. And if I knew I was going to be busy the next day, I would just make sure I was doing that ahead of time. I would try to start my piece. That way I already had the composition. I just had to go in there and finish it out and like get those reps in. So there was a little bit of that involved as well. And even speaking to what you're talking about with that you got to do because you love it, I think that is very true. I would not be doing this every day if I did not like it. I wouldn't have done it. I would have given up on it long ago. And I think most people do. You've realized that when you're doing a job, people usually give up on things that they don't find any passion from. So if you want to enjoy, I wasn't getting any great results until 200 days in. From a marketing perspective, most people probably would have given up. So I was only doing it just because I genuinely liked it. So yeah, for sure.
Do you think that that's like one of so whenever people can't continue a challenge, I guess some of it could potentially be discipline. Do you think a part of it is also that they don't love it enough, or that they haven't uncovered their why? Like, what do you think accounts for somebody not completing a challenge like that?
I think it comes down to, it can be multiple things for multiple different people, but I think it always comes down to a goal. If you don't have a goal in mind, it's not going to be achievable. It's that way with exercise, someone gets that first spark of motivation. I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do it every day. They get in there, they're going every day, maybe a week, maybe even a month, but then they slow down. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of this. I do it, so I know it. I'll start going to the gym, and then I'll slow down. I'll maybe go twice a week, maybe once. Oh, I totally forgot to go this week. Maybe I'll go next time. It all comes down to, though, why I do that and why other people do it is they don't have a goal in mind. Like, you're not reaching towards something. Think about it. 365 days sounds like a long time, but there's an end goal. 365 is the end goal. Once I get there, then I'm done. But with working out, a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm just going to start working out every day. And that's with diets. Like, people will do a diet for a certain amount of time, but if it's not something you like, if you don't like having salads every day for all your meals, you're not going to keep with that diet. So you got to find a workaround to reach your goal, So I think it all comes back down to, if you set that end goal and you at least set a milestone of some sort and you get there, I think that's where you can start pushing yourself to say, okay, that wasn't so bad. I did 30 days of working out straight. Let's go for 60 days now. You know, you have those end goals, you have those checkpoints. I mean, it's like a video game. It's like a race. You don't, you know, you're not going to finish a game once you get so far and then you fall off or you fail the level and then you have to start all over again. You know, that's not how games work. There's checkpoints, you know. And reaching that checkpoint is like, okay, I reached this checkpoint. I'm going to take a break now. I'll come back later. You know, so I think having those checkpoints, having those goals is the most important thing, especially when you're doing a daily challenge or any sort of challenge of the sort.
You mentioned the gym example, and like if you don't, or the salads, if you don't like salads, you're not going to continue eating it. And I think it's really interesting because there's a part of people that almost work against themselves whenever they do challenges. So it was really cool because this art challenge, like you're not working against yourself. You love it. You know you love it. There's no aspect of yourself that is, you know, extremely self-defeatist or like trying to, like you're not the type of person that just hates art and you're trying to get better because
right.
It's a skill to learn. And I think that is a lot what happens, and I don't think that like it's taken into consideration enough. I know that I've set a couple of goals or a couple of challenges where like I'll make myself do something, and I know that in moments where I either, you know, don't have as much discipline or decision fatigue sets in, like I don't want to do it. So you're right, like there's a certain aspect of setting goals that has to be, I want to do this. Like I'm psyching myself into wanting to do this in some way, shape, or form. And then that either that is rooted in the desire to hit the goal. Maybe it's, you know, the 365 days. Maybe it's the 60 days. Maybe it's a certain goal body look. Maybe, like there are so many different ways that you can set it up, but you have to want something.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, to even add on to that, like that's not to say that you should give up if you're like, you don't want to do it one day. You know, even if you like, I love doing art, but there's a lot of days I'm like, I do not want to do this. Like, I don't want to do this. I'm like, I guess I have to do this thing. You know, it's like, oh, and it sucked because I had to make some sacrifices where I'm like, oh, I want to go do this fun thing, but I haven't done my drawing yet, and I know I need to get that done. And, you know, I'm like, I still work full time, so trying to juggle that with my full-time job as well, I'm like, I knew I had to set that as like a priority to do first thing in the morning. It wasn't like a choice because I knew my work would take up my time. And if I really wanted to do the thing I wanted to do in the evenings, like just hang out with people or my friends, I knew I had to like just get it done with, and I had to like accomplish it. So even if you don't want to do it, if your root value is like you enjoy doing that thing, but there's times you don't want to do it, I think obviously the goal of a challenge is there should be some pushback on you. So I wouldn't go in with the mindset, obviously, and I'm sure you wouldn't either, but like going in with the mindset is like, well, if I love this thing, then I should always love it. It's like, no, it's going to be hard sometimes, and you're not going to want to do it sometimes, but I think it's, you know, the cringy saying, diamonds are made under pressure, you know, like the real,
I love that thing.
Yeah, the real gems come from you actually pushing through when you don't want to do it, and that's what makes you better at the things you do love to do.
Do you think that, so thinking about like whenever I don't want to do something that I actually love, so, you know, for example, something artistic or maybe writing, if I push myself to do it, usually I'll get into a flow state and I'll actually enjoy it in the moment. Does that happen to you too, even whenever you don't like doing it?
100%. I think it's always the start of a painting. And I think most artists will agree. It's always that start. You're trying to come up with an idea, and that's where the real challenge is starting the idea and getting to the point, because there are sometimes it's like an hour in, I'm like, I love this. I'm having so much fun. Like, I can't stop thinking about it. If I put down my pencil, I'll walk away, and all I'm thinking about is finishing that piece. I remember I didn't want to do a drawing. I sat down, I started that drawing, and I was like pushing through. I'm like, this isn't looking good. I kept going. And then I was like, wow, I'm really liking this. And I had to be somewhere at like 7 o'clock to go play volleyball with my friends. And it was like, it was 7 o'clock. I wanted to keep working on it. I went to go play volleyball, and the whole time I was just thinking about that drawing. I was thinking about finishing it. Obviously I still have fun at volleyball, but I mean, I was just thinking about it. So sometimes I do get in that flow state where it's like, whoa, this is working out. This is all coming together. I want to continue it. So Yeah, I think a flow state is a big part of it, and I think it's that process that's like the best part of art, obviously. I mean, there's obviously the social gratification part where, you know, you post it and people say it's cool or whatever, or, you know, your ego's deflated because you didn't get as many likes as last time. But really the best part is the flow state part where you're just doing it because you love it and you're loving the process. I think that's really where the fun is.
Yeah, understand that. Do you listen to a lot of music whenever you're in, like, how do you get yourself in the zone?
Man, that's a hard one. I don't know if I get myself in the zone sometimes. So, like, I'll listen to music, but a lot of the time, I just, like, have YouTube up, and I just have, like, long YouTube videos playing. Whether it's just, like, someone I enjoy playing, whether it's gaming commentary or whatever, it's almost like someone's talking to me. So I'm, like, working and talking. I love talking to people while I draw. I mean, I recently started live streaming, and that is so much fun to just talk to people while I'm drawing, and people asking questions and stuff. And, you know, sometimes my girlfriend or a friend will come over and I'm like, hey, I gotta finish this drawing. Especially when I was doing it every day, I'm like, I still gotta finish this drawing, but you can still come over and hang out. They're like, yeah, sure. And like, I'll talk to someone while I'm drawing. I think it just gets me in a creative mindset, and where I even like to have discussions while I'm doing it. And especially with painting, there is like a lot of pressure to make it perfect. So I'm not like really focused where I can't, like, I'm like, hey, shh, I gotta focus on this. Like, it's more so, hey, yeah, talk to me, let's talk. And then like ideas are just coming out of like my fingertips. So
I love that. So you mentioned pushback. Like, there's any good thing has an element of pushback. You have to grow. How did you deal with pushback? Like, what was the thought process that you went through, and how did you kind of overcome it?
Social pressure. And social pressure as in like social media pressure that I put on myself. I'm like, I'm posting every day. I've committed to this. Like, in my mind at least. I don't know if that's it for everyone, but I feel like the best way to keep committed to something is like an accountability person, you know? Like, that's why you have someone, you do challenges with other people and people who keep you accountable. Like a sports team. You go to sports because you have someone keeping you accountable. It's the same thing with my art. I felt like not posting it was my accountability, and like there was people there who were like, I can't wait to see tomorrow. Like, let me see tomorrow's. Like, and it's that aspect of like I'm letting those people down, and like I'm failing not only myself and like the goals I've set for myself, but other people who are also pushing me to do it. So anytime I feel like I don't want to, I'm like, well, I have to, because I've already gotten this far too. Especially as you get deeper into it, you're like, well, I've already gotten this far. Why would I stop now? This makes no sense. I'm 200 days in. I'm 100 days in. I'm a week in. I've already started. Why would I stop? You know? So I think the best thing to push back is pressure, and pressure from your peers especially, because I think if we have accountability to other people, because it's so easy to be like, you know what? I don't want to do it. It's just me. Like, who's going to affect? But if there's other people out there who are like, I want to see this from you, then you're like, well, I got to do it now. So I think peer pressure is the best way to get past the hurdles.
Were you thinking about this in the beginning? Like, I need to set this much accountability for myself. I need to, you know, start doing my drawings in the morning. Or did this come out of like trial and error?
Honestly, I just did it. Like, I didn't even think about it. Like, it was just like one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to just start drawing every day. Why not? Like, I just did it. I think it was because I recently got like my iPad Pro. I recently bought it, and I'm like, well, I want to get life out of this. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to do it every day. Why not? So I think as I started growing and I started doing it more and more and more, I started getting a system. And I started also realizing, I was like, you know what? I'm a digital marketer by trade, technically. So I was like, well, I can also use this as a way to learn a little bit about social media marketing. Obviously, best times to post, when I should post. And I think that's why my current process when I was doing the daily challenge is I would start it first thing in the morning, because like the ideal time to post for me at least, and from what I saw from my own metrics, was usually midday. Whether it was like 9 to like 12. 9 to 12 was like the best time to post for my audience. So I would try to do my drawing first thing in the morning. So I also had that accountability. I was like, well, I gotta try to get to the algorithm. I gotta try to post at this time. So let me do it first thing in the morning. Let's get it done. Let's have it posted. And then I'm not even like stressing about it, because I noticed a lot of the time, if I held it off in the evening, like the ideas were not there. I had all this pressure of thinking, I gotta get this done. I'm running out of time. But when I did it in the morning, I felt like I was like, you know what? If I'm not vibing with this right now, I can come back to it later. I usually didn't, but I always had it in the back of my head, like I can always come back and finish this later in the day. So I think the best way for me was just doing it first thing in the morning, and that ended up becoming my routine. Was I'd get up, I'd either go to the gym, come back, do it right before work, and if I didn't finish it, I would do it during my lunch break. That's also a benefit of working from home. I do work remote, so that is really nice. Is whenever I feel like there's a lull in my work, or if there's like some break or downtime, I just like work on my drawing and then try to finish it and then post it.
That's really cool. So I've heard from a lot of people that set habits consistently, that doing it in the morning is like the best thing to do, because you're fresh, you don't have decision fatigue, especially whenever it's difficult. Like in the beginning, before it's become a habit, there's an element of it that may be difficult. I know that some people who are creative like working at night, but yeah, I have seen for myself that if I just get up a little bit earlier, do the things that I need to do in the morning, have those as a checkbox. And you also said that you got to the point where you had no pressure, because you could say, I can do this later if I need to. Like, that is so nice. That's so I guess not I guess an understatement. Like, people don't, I do that myself, and like it makes everything so much better, but I hadn't put that to words. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, doing everything in the morning is always my favorite. I mean, I call myself a morning person, but I feel like most people are morning people. I mean, people are like, oh, I stay up late, but when you get up in the morning, like, the first thing you do is like the things that are important, I think. Like going to the gym. If I don't go to the gym in the morning, I'm not going to the gym later in the day. It's not happening unless, like, I have some random buddy who wants to go and a bunch of them are going. It just sounds like a fun activity, then maybe I'll go. But if it's like one of the hard pushbacks where you're like, I really don't want to go today because I'm just go by myself. Like, I gotta do it first thing in the morning if I want to at all do it. And I think that goes for like most things, whether it's reading or something I want to accomplish. By the time I get into the evening, I'm like, I don't want to even think about having to do anything hard. I just want to like have fun in the evening. So it seems like a huge burden if I do it first thing in the morning.
No, I completely understand that. Okay, so what was the process like of doing all of this? And I know that you started on Microsoft Paint, and then everything was, fun, and Microsoft drew you, and that's hilarious. Or maybe they traced you. But how did you decide on Microsoft Paint?
Okay, so this is a funny story. So I still have my iPad Pro. I've always used, like, I would call them like professional programs. Like I bought Manga like Studio 5.0. It's a really good drawing software. I used that for a couple years, and then I started using like my parents' like iPad Pro, and they had I bought Procreate on it, and Procreate is so affordable for artists. That's why it's just so popular. It's like it competes a lot with Photoshop in terms of just like how good of a program it is, and it's like $10 one-time purchase. So it just makes a lot of sense. I was like, hey mom, can I buy this on your iPad? And she's like, sure, it's $10. So I use that a lot, and then I got my own iPad, and then I just started using that all the time. But during the challenge, it was like 200 days in, the tip of like wore out. So I was like, well, I still got to do this drawing, and I'm going to do it digitally. I'm not going to do it traditionally because I don't have all of my tools or anything. So I was like, oh, this artist I follow, his name is like Gazed Soul on Twitter. His name's Espen. He did a digital piece on MS Paint that I saw. And I was like, that's really cool that you can do that in MS Paint. So I got inspiration from him to do it. I was like, well, you know what? I just ordered some new tips on Amazon. Those aren't coming in until like 2 days. So I'll just do an MS Paint piece today and maybe tomorrow as well. And my first piece, MS Paint, I look back on it. It does not look good. Like, it really doesn't. But it got 700,000 likes on Instagram. It reached like 30 million people, like 30 million unique accounts. So it was like crazy. I was like, what the heck? How does that work? And it didn't even look that good. I don't like, y'all go check it out on my Instagram. It really does not. I would say in comparison to all my other pieces, it's just like very basic. But it did so well. I was like, well, I guess I have to do it again now. I remember being so excited that I hit like 10,000 likes. I was like, no freaking way. This is like, I'm like, I made it. And then it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And I was like, what the heck? But the funny part about all that is that's where I picked up MS Paint. Cause I wasn't just doing it for clout. I realized I actually really liked it. I was like, this is a lot of fun. It felt very, like there was no like tools. I wasn't worried about unique brushes. I was just using what was there. It was very simple, and that was why I was using it. I was like, it's a simple program. It feels like I'm actually painting, and that was the real appeal for me, because I felt like I was relying a lot on like these custom brushes, and I would like see my favorite artists. I would download their brush packs, and I felt like it, like looking back on my paintings, I felt like they were messy. They weren't really like my style. It was me trying to mimic other people. And that's where, when I came to MS Paint, I felt like it was kind of like my style, because I was just doing simple tools, and I was doing landscapes, and I was doing paintings just based on like four little brushes and this really bad program. But I thought it looked good. I liked it, and I really enjoyed the process. So I did it again the next day, and that posted really well, obviously carrying on, and the rest is history. I just use it all the time now because I really like it, and my audience likes it. So it's a win-win for me.
That's amazing. So while you were talking about that, you said that Microsoft Paint is super simple, and the other ones you were almost making, like trying to make something complex, and use all these brushes and do all of these different types of images, and Microsoft Paint is the one that you liked. I wonder if it has to do with the fact that it is simple. Like, do you think that you learned more with Microsoft Paint about art?
100%. I also feel a lot more confident in my abilities too. I don't feel like I'm relying on brushes to be a painter. Like, I actually feel like I'm painting when I'm using MS Paint, because, you're not using any, you can't do any gradients, which is a huge piece for like a lot of artists. So you have to like manually select each color and like paint a little bit in to like make it look like a gradient, sort of. But I liked the look of it, like this texturized look to it, and it had like this own unique feel to it that I was like, I like this a lot more. It doesn't feel flat. It feels like there's a lot of layers. It actually looks like a painting. So I was sold on it. I think the simplicity of the program is what really sells it. I mean, especially what I've just heard from other people who use it. They're like, it's so simple, but that's what makes it so great. I mean, I'm not recommending it to people who want to actually do art professionally or going to the industry. You're going to need Photoshop or Procreate or whatever software for that. But for a hobbyist digital artist like myself who just does it because, like, what the heck, art's fun to do. I mean, MS Paint was just really awesome to use. And I feel like a lot more confident if I did go back to those other programs, or if I used them. I mean, I would just feel like I would just use 4 brushes. Just very simple brushes that I would need. You don't really need a lot to paint something, and you don't need to get too caught up in all these custom brushes and all these custom tools. Just use what's at your disposal, and I mean, it worked for me.
That's so interesting. So you challenged me right now, because I think that it's easy to look at something like Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator, see all of the tools, and use all of the tools to make something really cool. But if you're not understanding the fundamentals and you can't do something really, really great with the basics, like, are you really that good? You know what I mean? Like, if you need the extra brushes, I think there are elements that you don't have to learn. It's like I would almost consider all of those extra effects and tools like hacks. You know what I mean? Like, you're hacking a little bit, and you don't have to learn this little piece. You don't have to understand how to make a real gradient, or how to make something highlighted, or, how light falls a certain way, because there's something that helps you to do that. And I do think that you are a better artist whenever you really understand the fundamentals. Like, if you look at any of the best artists, that's what they did first. And I think that's a really, really great, a really great thought, just to, whenever you're starting something, like really, really understand, okay, what are the fundamentals? How do I simplify? How do I commit to something, build up my deepest skill sets, like the foundational skill sets? What are the things I need to learn well?
That's
what are
it.
those things?
Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead.
you go. No, you go.
I was just about to say that's a great call out because I mean, a lot of artists, like I watch, like professionals who have been doing it for years, they use a lot of these custom brushes and hacks. So there's nothing wrong with them, but it's like you said, they have the fundamentals. They know what looks good. They understand color theory. So they use all these custom brushes to speed up their process because they already know what they need to do, but they just like, they create all these custom brushes to help speed up their process, especially when you're professional and you need to bust out a bunch of paintings every day, you know, for a game or for a movie or for whatever you're working on. It makes a lot of sense to have those tools. But I think especially for beginners or amateurs or people who aren't doing it professionally or who are trying to do it professionally, get too caught up in these custom brushes and these tools. And like you said, they're just not relying on the fundamentals and getting good with those. And I mean, that goes back to like keeping things simple, like from a painting standpoint is like the goal of a painting. Like if you can do a painting in less brushstrokes, but still communicate the same idea, the painting is going to be much better than the painting that has a bunch of fine details, but it's not simplifying it for the viewer. Like you'll look at a lot of classical paintings. You'll notice if you look in the background or if you look in the shadows, you'll see a lack of detail. If you really look, but in the light, there is a lot of detail. And it's like their basic understanding of where you're trying to draw the viewer's eyes. So it's a lot of those things. You can simplify things. You can not put as much detail in things and not get too much caught up in it and just focus on your main focal point. I mean, that's really the whole purpose of painting, and that's really how you should paint. So, I mean, yeah, for sure. That was a great call out.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah. Thank you. So as you were talking, it kind of dawned on me that I think a part of it is about what has always been true, like what has always been present, you know. So for artists, like what are the things that are eternally true? What are the things that have always been present? And then whenever you master those, you said that like it's the specificity, it's in the details that you can really see whether or not somebody mastered their craft or whether or not somebody really knows. Because yeah, you can create a really, really good image, but what does the background look like? Or what are the, you know, what are the small details in the trees or, you know, in the birds or whatever? Like, and I think that is consistent throughout all disciplines. Like if you want to learn something well, yeah, you could, you know, learn all of the hacks, learn all of anything else. You can learn all of the information, but unless you master the fundamentals, there's no way, I don't think. I think that I can say this confidently. There's no way that you're going to have that expert level of almost care. Like it is care. You can care in an entirely different way. It's very specific.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. I mean, yeah, like sports. I always keep coming back to sports for some reason, but it's a great analogy because I mean everyone's done it at one point, but it's like you're not going to be good at baseball just because you can throw really fast. You know, you learn this really cool trick. Or like people who do basketball tricks, who do like all these cool dunks or like dunk contests or whatever. Like that doesn't make them a good basketball player because they don't have the fundamentals of like actual strategy. Or volleyball, you're not going to be good just because you can do like some sort of float serve or whatever. Like if you don't have the basics of setting, you don't have the basics of like understanding positioning from your teammates. If you don't have all those basics down, then just your one little cool trick isn't going to do anything. Very similar to art. If you don't have the basics, you can do all these cool tricks with these custom brushes you can share. And it can maybe wow a few people. But at the end of the day, you're like, I mean, you really just, if you don't have the fundamentals, your pieces are going to lack just that much. You know, you're going to get yourself stuck in a place where you're just relying on these like tricks and you're not actually understanding painting fundamentals. You're not understanding composition. You're just relying on this cool cloud brush that you found, but you don't actually understand how clouds work. You know, you're just doing these clouds, but then your pieces come all very kind of muddy and morphed together because there isn't really anything. There is, maybe this isn't the right way to put it, or maybe it is. I've noticed, like, if I look back at my old paintings where I relied a lot on custom brushes, there was nothing special about it. It felt muddy. It like, you could maybe look at it and be like, that looks cool. That looks cool. But there was nothing really personable about it. There's no like real style to it when you like really looked at it. But now when I look at my pieces, because I'm thinking about every stroke I'm doing, I'm not relying on a brush. I'm thinking about everything I'm doing. Every stroke I'm doing has purpose. Now I look at my pieces, I'm like, wow, that's my style. Like, I'm proud to show this to someone. While before, I would create a piece and I was like, it looks cool, and then I wouldn't really care to show it to people. And that's kind of like where I was getting at.
I think, tell me if this is correct, it lacks depth. Like, you can almost tell that an artist who has worked on making one stroke perfect, like, there's something to be said about that one stroke. Like, you can tell that that one stroke has years of experience behind it. And that's why people love art, is because, like, that's apparent. You know, you can write, and you can tell a good writer between, you know, a not good writer pretty easily. But art is really interesting because you either see the depth or you don't. Like, you can see something that took somebody hours and years to be capable of doing. And then if you're somebody who doesn't like art, then you look at an art piece and then you try it and then you realize.
Yeah. I think it's not just depth, but it's less is more, you know, the less there is, but you can still see that depth, you know, like writing is a great comparison, because like a good writer, they don't use a bunch of words to fluff up their, you know, their novels. They're very careful with how they craft their words in very short sentences, but they still communicate a lot in very few words. Same thing with art. Less shapes, less objects or whatever, less strokes, but you're still communicating that same idea as just a bunch of clutter and fluff put in there just to cover up your mistakes. I feel like a lot, when you put a lot on top of things, is you're trying to cover up your mistakes. Think about chicken scratch writing, or not really chicken scratch writing, but chicken scratch line art. You know, when you're drawing, like a lot of newer artists or beginner or amateur or whatever, they'll kind of like scratch, trying to like draw something because they're not confident in their lines. A professional is confident in their lines because they've done it so many times, and they do it one stroke. That's it. Just like to draw a face, they'll just do one stroke. But with someone who doesn't have a lot of experience, they try to mask that with their like chicken scratch, where they're just doing like each one because they're not confident in their lines. So they have to like try to make sure they're doing each one, and they're having to do a lot more strokes, and it just doesn't look as good as someone who just does one, you know? So while a lot of people sometimes think like doing a lot more can be good, I think most people agree less is definitely more. And it's true for writing. It's true, and it's also true for art, you know, and true for most things.
I think, yeah, I would agree. It's crazy to me. Whenever I was trying to learn to be a better writer, there was a phrase, I forget who said it, but it was, a great writer knows what to take out. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, just the precision, you know what I mean? Mastering your craft is about really, really understanding something to the point where you don't need all of the extra stuff. Like, you don't need to do an extra fancy layup. You don't need to do an extra fancy whatever. If you do it really, really, really well, if you do something just so well that nobody has any like qualms with it. They're just like, yeah, that was slick. That was amazing.
100%.
It kind of like rolls off your tongue, you know, like good writing, good anything. It's just, I think that's also why they say, what do they say? Like, great dancers make it look easy, or like great anything makes it look easy. It's because of that precision. Exactly.
Yeah. The better the pros, like you'll watch a lot of like sports. You're like, I could do that. You get out there, you can't do it, you know. But they make it look so easy, like gymnastics. That thing. Now that is yes, and they make it look easy. But man, you hop on a bar or anything like that, you're just like, oh my gosh, how do they do that? You know, so it's exactly that. It really is their position and them doing less, you know, and it's, man, we keep going back to comparisons, but I also do jujitsu, and that's a big thing with jujitsu. Newbies do too much. They gas themselves out after rolling for like 6 minutes, but professionals, they'll roll for like 2 or 3 hours straight, and they'll maybe have like a drop of sweat. It's because they use less of their body weight and they're doing more leverage and they're doing less moving because they're just focusing on precise movements and they're not focused on just like moving their muscles all around or spazzing out or just like trying to move a lot. They're preserving their energy. So really that, you know, less is more really flows through everything. Sports, writing, art, cooking, you know, putting too many spices, you know, your work, you know, scheduling too many things, you know, all of those things coincide with, at the end of the day, to do any discipline or do any art or to be good at anything, focus on those fundamentals. And then when you focus on being really good at those things, you'll realize you don't have to be all flashy. You don't have to be doing a bunch of details. You realize you don't have to be putting in a bunch of fluff. Your words will speak for themselves. And the more high quality they are, the less you have to put there.
Mic drop. Like, seriously. Okay, so you kind of talked about how you wrote and what that process was like. Now I kind of want to go into why it matters to learn something deeply. Like, what has it added to your life to, you know, get better at art and to add this as a hobby or just as, like, it's funny because any type of movie that you watch where there's a hero, like a hero always has learned something deeply or they've always gotten to some place in some discipline. And so I think it's something that we look up to and admire, but now that, you know, we have a lot of screens, we have a lot of things that distract us, it's harder to become a hobbyist in anything. Like, you look at people a long time ago and most of them had hobbies. Most of them had things that they liked to do. I was listening to something a little while ago and it was, they were saying, like, we did this poll and asked people if they had a hobby and, like, ridiculous amount said no. 70+%, 80+%.
Wow,
like,
that's crazy.
People don't have hobbies.
That's insane. But honestly, I say that's insane, but it's not that surprising though, because I've met a lot of people. I'm like, what do you like to do? And I feel like a very common response is, I like to listen to music. I'm like, doesn't everyone listen to music? I mean, like, but they're not saying like they're a critic or anything. They're just like, oh yeah, I like to listen to music. I like to watch TV. You know, I like to scroll on.
Read a book.
Yeah. I mean, reading a book, though, there is a lot of value there that you can get, you know.
It's not a hobby.
I mean, it's arguably, it can be.
I don't think so. I think you read a book to get better at a hobby. Unless there's a specific reason, like I read books and then I comment, or like I read books and I annotate them and then I do something else. But like I don't think reading, I don't know.
I think you could argue reading's a hobby. I think most people who like to read, though, I think, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's they read, but they're usually writers, so they're gaining something like this is great storytelling, and like they're like kind of absorbing that for themselves for when they write their own stories or anything of the sort. But
yeah, usually, well, like you don't ask questions, or like the problem with reading I've seen is that people will read for a certain purpose. Like, okay, let me go backwards. What I mean to say is that people will read for a certain purpose that's like outward or like social. Like, oh, I read, 300 books this year. Woo, go me. But like the problem is, and I was reading somebody, he had done that, and he had done that for a couple of years. And then he was like, and then I realized that if I just reread the same 5 amazing books over and over and over again, I'd get more than I got from those 100 books. Like, if you're not actually ingesting anything or like putting things into practice, what is it really doing for you? Like, I think there's an element of like subconscious, like it's subconsciously helping you. Like if I listen to a lot of podcasts on something, but if I listen to, for example, Andrew Huberman, I'm not going to become a neuroscientist.
Right.
I have to like read and then notate, or listen and notate and then do something else.
Right. I think like when I read a book or something, that's a great point because like I'll read it and I'll like remember parts of it. But if you ask me summarize each chapter, I'd be like, what? Um, I would be able to tell you back to about this book I always recommend to people too, so that's a great point. But I mean, I think for art especially, and like what I think is the main benefit I got just from like a value perspective, like obviously I think it is a little bit of a confidence thing too, like being proud of something you created. I mean, I think it's just like any other hobby, or like there's a part of you like the process and you also like the results of it. And there's like a bunch of different layers. So the process, obviously, when I get into that flow state, I'm like, I'm really liking this. Then the results of it, I was like, wow, I created this thing that I'm really proud of. And then sharing that with other people. I mean, we as creatures love to share things. I mean, whether we like conversation with people, we are not isolated creatures. People cannot be isolated or they'll go insane. We're made to have conversations. And so when we make something and we show it to someone, we get that little bit of a confidence. And I mean, that's with the gym. You always hear when people go to the gym, or people who do go to the gym, they always have more confidence, like just as like a mental health benefit. Like they feel more confident in themselves. They're not as insecure. And I think that can go along with, I mean, I feel like with art too. I feel like I'm creating something valuable because it not just expresses me, but it also expresses how much time I put into something, which I think go hand in hand. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's also time spent constructively. Like,
yeah,
so you said the confidence thing, and I was like, oh my gosh, actually, that's so interesting. I didn't think about it, but I do think that that's really true. Like, I don't think there's anything that I've ever done to better myself that has not made me more confident. Or there's nothing that I've ever created that has not made me semi-proud of it.
mm-hmm.
And I think that that's almost something that's missing, maybe, in our society, is that I don't think that we are creating enough. Or like we're consuming a lot, but what are we creating?
Right.
En masse.
Like, what is art, Because I don't know if you've been keeping up with AI recently, but AI art is all the craze now. People are, whether I think it's like Mid-Journey or Dolly or whatever. You type in a phrase and then you get a bunch of pictures of art, and then you can choose which one you want to take to like a higher resolution, and it will generate that and make it more detailed. And people are worried about that. People are like, are artists going to be replaced? But honestly, I'm like, but what is art? Is art just a picture? Because that's all that AI is creating. Art is a form of human expression. It's a form of human emotion. It's a communication method. Like talking or speaker or writing, you're not, a robot can do that, but it doesn't mean anything. It's just words on a page if a robot generates some speech. What does it mean? That robot doesn't have any feelings, doesn't have any emotions. It's not trying to tell you something. But that's what art is. It's a human expression. So when I'm creating art, I'm never worried, oh my gosh, I'm going to get replaced. Like, AI is going to be able to do this. Yeah, AI can create a picture. It doesn't mean anything. What does that picture mean? It means nothing. So I've never been too worried about it, but I know for like the professional industry, there's like a lot of concern around it because of like, are artist jobs going to be replaced? And I don't think so. I think it's just going to help people come up with ideas faster. They can come up with ideas so that I think people can use AI as a tool, kind of like custom brushes. Use that as a tool, but it will never replace the human emotion. It will never replace art because AI art is just AI pictures. And you're just taking but I think as artists, we can take inspiration from pictures like nature. Like when we go outside and we see nature, it's not art because, it's not really expressing itself. It doesn't have emotions necessarily. But when we paint something or we create something from nature, that's where we call it art. So AI can generate all at once. nature can generate all it's wants, but it's not until we do something with it and we create something we want out of it where it's truly called art and it shows our expression from it.
I love that you brought this up. Thank you very much. So I was listening to something recently because me and my dad were talking a bit about it actually. And so the way that AI art and AI music and any type of AI generated creative piece is created is AI will, like, the same way that machine learning does. It'll take in a lot of information and then it'll put something together and then it'll present it as a product. So AI rendered art takes art from all over and then puts it together in an interesting way and then, you know, creates a final product. And that's how the music works. That's how it all works. It is interesting. I think that, like, this whole question of, like, where does AI go? You know, how big does it get? I was talking again to my dad about this, and, like, it's kind of scary though. I think it's Ex Machina. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I actually have not seen it, but I know the concept. So the concept is basically that you have this robot, and can a robot generate human feelings? Like, can a robot come or create human emotions, have human emotions? And I think the problem that I have is whether or not, like, we will actually be duped by these things, though. You know what I mean? Like, there's AI that's becoming very, very surreal. Like, it's so real. It seems real. It looks real. It sounds real. And it's only going to become more real. So then do we get to a certain point where, like, yeah, AI can't have feelings for us, but we can have feelings for them? Or, like we can feel sorry for them, or we can pity them, and what
Interesting.
lines does that blur?
Yeah, I actually did watch Ex Machina, so that's interesting. Yeah, go ahead though.
It's so crazy. And then with the emotion and the art, like, yeah, so I do think that, you know, humans are the only ones to really create emotive and amazing art, but I actually think we will get to a place where a lot of people are into, like, robot generated art or, like, fake art. Like, that already happens though, you know what I mean? You could argue that digital art is that in some senses, not completely, but kind of. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it can be a tool, you know? Like,
yeah.
I think that goes, like, back to what I was saying about it being more of a tool rather than it actually being art. You know, because, like, I use a comparison with nature. You know, we're not going to go say a tree that looks really beautiful is art necessarily. We don't call it art. We just call it a tree. And that's what AI pictures are. They're pictures. That's AI art is just pictures. A picture isn't necessarily art. It's just a representation of something. But that doesn't mean it has that emotional element behind it or any feeling behind it. It's kind of like my process behind it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think, so, like, I see art that's, like, painted or drawn a little bit differently than I see art that is graphically or, like, designed, you know, graphically made or designed. Is it harder? I imagine so. I feel like it's harder to put emotion into graphic art than it is to put it into, like, paintings or sketches.
I don't feel that way. I mean, the process is very similar. Yeah, no, I don't.
Okay.
I think digital art and traditional art share almost everything in hand. Like, I know a lot of people have this, like, stipulation that digital art is cheating, but it's really not. It's just making a process faster. But, like, you'll give somebody digital art. You'll give someone a drawing program. They're not going to be able to create anything out of it unless they understand something. Same thing with traditional. Give someone a canvas and a pencil. They don't understand anything about art. It's not going to look good. It's the same thing for digital art. There has to be the person behind it that's actually guiding it and the person who's actually drawing it, you know? Like, we're not going to say that someone's cheating because they're using a tool, right? If they're actually using the tool to communicate their emotion from it, then, like, is that really cheating? Is that like, and people can do that with AI art. Like I was saying, people can take some generated ideas, and then I think they can take that and, like, eat whatever they want from it. They can use it to inspire them. Like, that looks really cool. That's kind of what I'm trying to communicate. So maybe AI art can be a way for us to help communicate our own emotions, but the AI never itself will communicate those emotions.
Interesting. Some people want AI to have emotions, or like to be able to mimic emotions.
I mean, I think it can copy things. Like it can look at something and copy it, but that will never be its true self, you know? It's kind of like the inherent value of humans, you know, it's that we do have emotions and we do have values, but you can mimic things. AI can mimic things, it can copy things, but it will never inherently have those emotions that we as humans have that makes us unique comparatively to AI or to anything really.
Yeah, or at least that's going to be an interesting thing to watch, like develop and unfold. Is the how do we value? Because we're going to also have to define human value. You know what I mean? Like, what is human value opposed to AI value, and how do we define that? And you know, there are definitely some people that will look at the price tag of an AI robot and be like, okay, well, it's more valuable to me than some people, which is not good.
No, it's not.
But like, yeah, there are a lot of interesting questions with AI. Thank you for bringing that up. I love talking about the future. I definitely think that it's an interesting question about, you know, whether or not AI generated things are even comparable. I think that goes back to the precision. Like, are you a really, really good artist? Have you, and not just artist, but like, yeah, that's actually an interesting question. Like, what are the things that AI can't do, and then how do you get to the point where you develop those things more?
Are you saying like should we? Oh, we can't rephrase the question or ask it again.
I think there's going to be like a period where AI will replace everything that it can replace. So then what are the things that it can't replace, and how do we double down on those? Like, what are some of the things that you think it can't replace?
I don't think it can. It can't replace true creativity. I don't think it can do that. And like what I think I've been reiterating a lot is the human emotion. It can't replace that. It can mimic it, but it can never truly come up with its own emotions. It's not going to come up with a feeling independently. It has to be pushed by something. Automation, like, I think people are unreasonably scared of automation. It's just it's gonna help us. It's not going to take over things. Like, people are thinking it's going to lose jobs. No, it's going to make people not have to do jobs that are laborious and things that are just going to make them unhappy. It's going to actually be able to help people be more creative and do things that they can actually like, because it's going to help them support those things. But someone at the end of the day has to push AI to do something, to feel something. But AI is never going to do that independently. We can imagine it will, like Ex Machina, like that whole idea. It'll never be a reality though. We can think, oh, it has its own emotions, but we gave it those emotions. It's not actually coming up with those emotions independently from us. So
I can see.
So I think I think that just goes with like anything though, with any type of work. At the core of the work, it's got to be the person who has the strategy and comes up with the creativity to make the AI help them accomplish their goal. But the AI is never going to have that goal, you know, without us pushing it towards it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a topic I want to learn more about. I think it's a almost a call to action to people. The whole idea of automation. I read something recently, and it was the case for automation in B2B partnerships. And it was interesting because he was basically explaining that, like, look, some people are opposed to automation because they fear it. But like, imagine having your random to-dos lessened so that you can spend more time talking to people or building relationships.
Yep.
And I think that's the call to action, and that's the question that I'm asking myself whenever I think about automation. What are the things that I need to be good at that are human? You know, talking to people, building relationships, establishing trust, or I don't know, writing maybe, or, you know, drawing, I don't know, or having a certain skill. Like, what are those things that are human that will never be overtaken, but that that if I, if I develop my skill set in that, like that will be a superpower always.
I mean, I think you kind of answered it yourself. It's all those things you just listed. Talking to other people, art, music, expressing ourselves is always going to be something that can never be overtaken, And I think the more that we just get automation to take away the laborious things, the things that don't really truly bring us any, like, these, like, nuances, like, these things that make it more difficult. You could argue that an oven isn't real cooking because we're not using a fire and everything. No, it helps us get to what we want. It helps us get to the goal that we're trying to. It makes it easier to cook things and enjoy. Yeah, like enjoy what we want to do, Technology advancing is making the human life easier in a sense, but it's helping us get back to expressing ourselves and creating our own things that we want to actually create and achieve that creativity faster and get it done and be able to enjoy it faster, which some people argue is, some people argue whether it's a bad or good thing, because some people will say there should be that more, journey to it, which is why some people live off the grid and do just make, food with just a fire, and that's totally fine. But, I think overall, though, it's going to help. Like, I don't think it's a good thing that someone has to stand in a factory line and put together something. Like, I think that person could be doing something way more valuable that they would actually enjoy if that task was automated. I think there would be a call for them to actually do something else. So a lot of people see automation as taking jobs or whatnot, and this could be controversial. So you don't have to include this on the podcast or whatever. But I honestly think it's actually going to help people get out of those situations where they are doing those laborious tasks, and they're going to be able to do more creative tasks, and they're going to be called to be able to see, hey, I can do something else that isn't just with this automation pieces. It's going to force people out of their comfort zone. I mean, it's really easy to do those things. I mean, I'm just as guilty. It's easy for me to not create, but when I'm forced to do it, I really enjoy it. And once I see the result, I want to do it again. It's the same thing. If I'm just feel like I'm stuck in this scenario where I have to be an assembly line or whatnot, I'm never going to leave because I'm just comfortable with it. And I feel like I have to always do it. But once you lose that thing that you're comfortable in, you realize, like, well, I got to push my boundaries a little bit. And we can maybe close this subject with, I was listening to an artist who was an animator, and he spent years in animation, and he was doing like the classic animation where you would like flip the page, you do the drawing, you'd have it over the light, and he was doing that. That's how he learned animation all through school. And then 3D and softwares came out. Toy Story, all these things started taking over animation, and he was realizing he was out of job, and he couldn't, he's like, this is what I like to do. I like to do all these other things. Like, this is how I've learned art. But he realized when he learned the new software, when he got adjusted to these hurdles, he was able to take all those fundamentals that he's been building and translate them to these new softwares, and he was even able to create better animations. And he's like, I'm going to do this. And this whole conversation that he was talking about was because of people concerned about AI art. And he's saying, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to take AI art and we're going to use it to be able to even create better things with it, So I think that's all it's going to do for us. I think it's just going to help us come up with more ideas. But the AI art by itself is never going to be as valuable as somebody maybe taking ideas from that art and actually creating their own things with those ideas. So
yeah, the case for automation is, I think, is a big one. Like, okay, so you mentioned a couple of things that were really, really interesting to me. The first was that, like, yeah, we've been here before, the oven, you know what I mean? Look at the industrial era. Everybody thought that, factories were going to take jobs, and everybody thought that this other thing, like, we've been through this so many times, and it's not that it takes something, it just creates new options. I was talking to my grandpa, and he was looking at my life choices, and he was like, we didn't have options growing up.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I had no options. He's like, I look at you and you tell me the things that you want to do, and like a part of me can't believe it, because like we had no options. There were like
Yep.
5 paths and that was it. And I think that is what this does. This just opens up more options.
Yep.
Like,
College used to be the only option for people. People felt like they had to go to college. And for a lot of the time, it was the case. Like, you had to go to college to land a job or to get any sort of education. But then birth the internet. Then birth, free education from the internet, Now the value of college has gone down a lot, and like other programs are coming about. And
boot camps.
exactly, boot camps, coding boot camps, business boot camps, all these, even artist course, like just online artist, like art courses are way more valuable. It's like $1,000 for like a 6-month boot camp online where you get that like one-to-one teacher interaction, and it's not thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars like college is.
4 years of your life.
Exactly, or years of your life. Exactly. You'll find out very quickly if you like it or not, and it's only a 6-month investment, really. Mm-hmm. So I think we're starting to realize with technology in general, not just AI, just technology, and as things get better, like more options. I think that's a perfect way to put it. More options come available to us, and we realize that it's not just as straight and narrow, and that there are a lot of other paths we can go down.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned life is easier, and like that's true. I think that's also why, though, people are putting into their lives things like, for example, you're committing to this challenge, like throwing in a hobby or making a commitment to go to the gym. Like, you almost need that discomfort, because a long time ago we used to get that through our life. Like, that used to be the thing that made us better. And now, since everything's so comfortable, like, we don't have discomfort unless we put it in there.
Yep.
A lot of the times. And so,
exactly.
Or like, at least the discomfort that we feel is so not small, but like kind of small compared to what it used to be.
Yep.
So it's like we need to add types of discomfort into our life. I kind of want to touch on that a little bit, like the experience of doing something that's uncomfortable, or like what does that change in a person,
I mean, I think it's like anything. It just causes growth, because, I mean, I think we touched on it a little bit already. Just,
kind of growth, though.
I think it's growth that not just personal growth, like you're going to be better at something or whatever. Like, if I do something enough and I push through the hard parts of it, I'm going to be better at that thing. It's going to be a lot easier going forward. So the more we push through the uncomfortableness, that uncomfortableness will be comfortable. We won't find it uncomfortable anymore. And a new level of uncomfort will come. That's all it really will be. I mean, uncomfort's never going to go away, but it's going to make us better at things, and it's going to make us more confident. We're going to see growth. I mean, we are growth. We as creatures, when we get complacent, that's really where people get down in the dumps. Like, really, like when you get complacent, and years will go by your life where you'll be like, I didn't really do anything. I mean, I can look back on some years, it's like, wow, I didn't really accomplish that much in that year. Like, I didn't push myself besides just going down the path. And I think a real sobering thought is kind of like this picture I have right above my, I wish I could, maybe I could show it. Let me see if I can pull it off. But it's this, I hang this on my wall. It's a dot for every single week of your life till you're 88 years old. And what this shows is really, it's kind of weird, but what it shows is like, look at it. I'm only like, 21 years old, and almost a third of my life, really, when you look at it, is almost up. Like, that's not what you think of.
Unless there's like crazy massive improvements in longevity, and then you're like less than, a sixth done.
Right. And all of it is to say that, like, really all of it comes down to, I need to hang that up later. I just realized I can't hang that up right now. But, but, I mean, at the end of the day, like, pushing ourselves is just always going to be more gratifying in the end of it. We should always have some sort of uncomfortableness, and I'd even go so far as to say suffering in our life. I mean, to appreciate the good times, you know? So if your life's always complacent, you never appreciate the good times because you're just always in this lull of doing the same thing, and there's no challenge. And we as humans love challenges, I think, whether people like to admit it or not.
No, I would agree. I think it's, so you said the, like pride, internal pride, and that you can look at yourself in the mirror and be content with yourself. Like that's massive. And I don't know, I think that raising your standard constantly, being able to do things because you want to do them, like being able to say, I'm going to do this, and then doing it, or doing things that are difficult consistently. Like those are all things that make you look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, I'm pleased, I think.
I think.
Well, I guess it's like it's a constant battle though. Like, you can't be pleased and then done.
For sure. Yeah, it's always going to be there. So.
Okay. One last topic before we hit you with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So I think that you've done a lot in this year by committing to this challenge. What advice would you give to somebody who wants, like there's a quote, it's like we underestimate the things that we can do in 5 years and we overestimate what we can do in 1 year. But I also think that we slightly underestimate the things that we can do in 1 year as well. Like we look at, or you could honestly even apply it to, we overestimate the things that we can do in a day or a week, and then underestimate the things that we can do in a month just by being consistent or just by, chipping away at something. What are some, I guess, tips or words of wisdom that you would give to somebody who wants to become better at something or, grow in some way, do more in a year?
I think my biggest piece of advice I would give is find something you like. And I think people should do multiple different hobbies. I don't think you should just do one hobby. I think you should have a creative hobby. I think you should have a physical hobby. And I think you should have a social, hobby. So I think you should have those three things. And I think those three things all balance out with each other. For example, my creative hobby is obviously art, but I also do like music. I play a box drum a little bit. I'm not a crazy musician or anything. Don't ask me to play or anything. I don't have any of my music online. But I think that gets down to our human core of wanting to create things and express ourselves in a creative way. I think that's just a natural human tendency. People are like, I'm not really a creative person. Everyone's a creative person in some way. Whether they care to admit it or not, everyone is. A physical hobby, obviously, I think the mind and body work together. I don't think you can your body reacts how your mind is reacting. So I think you should do sports, for example. You should pick up some sort of hobby, whether that's going to the gym, whether that's playing a fun game of volleyball a couple times a week, or playing baseball with your friends, or whatever the case is. Pick up or walking. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be anything crazy. It can be a walk. It can be a bike ride. It can just be hopping on a skateboard from your garage or whatever. Whatever the case is, I think that will help a lot. And then that social aspect, I think having people around you, especially people you value, is always going to make you better at things. I mean, I think about my art and doing this challenge. The people I cared most about seeing my art was those people I valued the most in my life. I got to share my art with, whether it's my family or a close friend of mine or my girlfriend or whatever the case is. When I share it with them, that's where I get a lot of value from, because it's like I'm having a conversation with, because I'm like, I value this person. This person values me. I know what I'm doing, and they push me to this is really good. Try this, keep going, that encouragement, and just doing things more socially. I mean, we are social creatures. So I think those are the three main things. If you want to even start any challenge, I feel like you should find something you're passionate about in one of those three buckets. Because if you don't know what you're passionate about, try things. Like, if you don't know if you like art, try it for 30 days. Like, 30 days really isn't that hard to do. There's 12 months in a year. Try something new every month and see what sticks, you know? You'll find out, and it doesn't even have to be a month. It could just be a couple of weeks, you know? Keep a small scale. Try to follow tutorials and just see if you like it, because a lot of the times you will find something you like no matter what.
I love that. So 2 things. First, it was interesting that you said mind, body, and spirit things, because that's actually like the trio whenever it comes to person health.
Mm-hmm.
You said find something that's that fulfills your mind, your body, and then you also said relationships, which I would take that to mean spirit, like some aspect of your, like, you're so much more spirited whenever you're around people that you really love. They usually fill your cup in some way, shape, or form. So it was really interesting that those are the things that you said, because that's just like an eternal truth. And there's also an eternal truth that goes along with that. I think I talked to Nick Runlet about this. It was if you're feeling off in any type of way, audit your mind, body, and spirit. Like, something's off in one of those 3.
Yep.
And just like really, really, really think about it and then get it back in alignment. And the second thing, so I was talking to my dad today because he showed me this video of this dude, and he was basically asking, like, are you having a hard time doing something? Like, do you get to your computer and you just don't want to do the thing that you're supposed to do? Or like, do you open up your sketch pad and you just don't want to do it? And he was like, if you don't want to do something that much, it's because you don't love it. And like we were talking about, there are some things that, that you don't want to do because of the circumstances around it. But if you legitimately can't even get into a state of flow, you probably don't love it. And he was explaining the ways that he has found to help somebody understand what they love. And he was saying, you first ask the question, like, what do you love? And if you have anything that pops in your mind, okay, great. But second, like, what do you look up on YouTube? What is your YouTube feed? What are the most watched videos? Okay, put a pin in that, And then he was like, okay, well, what are you gravitating to in terms of books? Like, what are the books that you read? What are the movies that you watch? And he was like, the things that you do subconsciously, like, what does your feed look like? Those things that you're doing subconsciously, like, those are the things that you actually love. The things that, you're just gravitating towards. You can tell yourself that you like something, but if you're not actually watching YouTube videos in it consistently, do you really love it?
Right. No, I agree with that, but there is one caveat I would give to that, and is sometimes I will sit down with a sketchbook. I'll doodle for a second, and then I'll give up on it. Like, I can't do this right now. Sometimes I will. But I don't think that necessarily means I don't love it. But I wouldn't say that's a good thing that I do that. I would say more so, I should push myself through those moments. Like, if I feel like I know I need to do it, but I'm not doing it, I think that's more of my laziness. I mean, like, things are hard. Like, things you love to do will be hard sometimes. You're like, you don't want to do it. But pushing yourself through it, that's usually where I can get to that flow state, is if I push myself through that initial hard part, those first 15 to 30 minutes. After that, I'm usually home free. But I don't think it's necessarily like I don't love it. But I think it's more so my human nature is just to be lazy. So
yeah, maybe that. And then also, like, sometimes I just don't want to do the things that I actually love. And it's because, I either didn't get enough sleep, or like maybe I'm hungry, or, like, maybe there's something else that's off, or maybe I haven't hung out with somebody in a long, long time, and like, I'm just burnt out. And at that point, I just have to listen to myself.
100%.
Okay. You ready for these rapid fire questions?
I'll try.
What do you think about the term blitz? Like, do you like this term?
I've heard it before, but I've only heard it in context of my brother and sister going to this camp for the Silver Air Patrol that they used to do in their youth, called Blitz, and it was like a really intense boot camp. But that's all I have familiarity with that term.
Well, maybe not then. So I call this section rapid fire, but I actually think the name is like really, really off, because it's not rapid questions, and it's also usually not a rapid answer. So, like, it's kind of rapid fire, but somebody gave me the term blitz and said that that may be a good term. And I was like, maybe.
Yeah, to me it sounds really intense. The term blitz, just from my history with it.
That's not the term. Okay.
Let's go for it.
Yeah, we'll just go for it. I think rapid fire is just, it's easy to say. People understand what it means, you know.
Exactly.
We'll continue. First question. What is a good life?
A good life. Damn, that's a hard question. What the heck? I think from my perspective, I am a Christian. So I think a good life is glorifying my Savior, Christ Jesus, in everything I do. I think that's what a good life is, and doing everything unto Him. I think it means whatever I'm doing, whether it's art, whether it's even eating or just hanging out with people, if I'm doing it to glorify Him, I'm doing it as a representation of Him, I think that is a good life. And I don't necessarily think a good life means you're going to go without suffering. I think suffering is a part of life. And I think it's a part of how we grow on this earthly body. So I think we also have to define our terms a little bit, like what is good. And I would define good as anything that remotely that glorifies God. I would define that as good. I would define things that are part of God to be good. Anything that is separate from God, I would consider not good. So I guess my definition of good life would be that.
Whenever I picture like somebody who's living to glorify God, there's an aspect of sort of like joy in them. And I would say that you're one of the very few people that I know that just exudes that consistently.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you feel that way.
Okay. Second question. What lights your spirit up?
Oh man. Are these all very existential questions? I feel like you're going to get the same answer from me. What lights my spirit up? Actually, I would say relationships for sure lights my spirits up. Because not just that they're like Christian relationships I have with people, but just getting to know people and converse with people, kind of similar to like when I was doing my live streams, talking with people on those live streams while I'm drawing. I was like, wow, this is freaking awesome. I'm talking with people around the world. They're asking questions. I'm getting to know these people I never would have otherwise. Like that really gets me fired up. Like after doing that, or meeting with someone I haven't talked to in a long time. Maybe I knew them when I was like really little, but then I meet them now in our adulthood. And it's like, wow, you're a totally different person. Like that really lights my spirits up. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with my, my Christianity, and just like having fellowship with not just Christians, but other people and talking with them about God. But ultimately it's just like those fundamental root relationships having with people. Even if we don't have those conversations with them, getting to talk with them, I think is what really lights my spirits up.
That's awesome. All right. And last question. If you could only leave one piece of advice for the world and generations below you, what would it be?
One piece of advice.
Yeah.
To glorify God and enjoy Him forever. That's what I would say.
Damn, that was good.
I
don't know if I'm supposed to say damn to that, though.
Yeah, no, hopefully they're not damned. That's the hope.
No. Good.
Great.
Synonyms, yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Christian. I will leave all of your links and everything below. Is there anything that you specifically want to say to people or point them in any direction in particular?
Well, if people want to keep following me for my art journey, just like you can go to my social medias. That's where I'll be doing it. But honestly, that's not what I'm going to recommend. I'm going to recommend y'all get on YouTube and y'all search up art tutorials, because I think everyone should do art, just my opinion. So you should do art, and you should just get on there, look up a tutorial, and copy it. Don't even worry about anything else. Just copy it and like take notes on what it's doing and just start creating. That's what I recommend.
That was great. We didn't get into any art techniques or like how you did it, but You said that you went and did, like, did you watch videos and see the different things that they did and deconstruct that?
Yep, I just watch videos. I follow artists that I take a lot of inspiration from. I look at their work and I study their work. So if you want to get better at something, just study other people's stuff. I mean, just like our AI conversation, there's no such thing as really an original thought. We all derive inspiration from things around us. So derive inspiration from tutorials you watch on YouTube, derive inspiration from people you follow on social media. You can make social media a very productive thing. You can make it as a source for you to drive inspiration to create things. So that's my last advice and tip to everyone.
Thanks, Christian.
I hope that you found this episode enriching. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you would like to write a rating or a review, that would be fantastic. You can also follow me at Iglu Podcast. I'm looking forward to our next episode. Cheers.
We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that.